Eastney Beach is an internationally important environment to nature conservation and is part of the UK's Biodiversity Action Plan known as BAP. Our reporter Shan Robins caught up with one of Portsmouth's countryside officers to find out more.
Down on Eastney's seafront, there's educational material explaining the importance of the beach, what the plants are and the things they can see. Peter Roberts has been the countryside officer for Portsmouth for the last 8 years, and he manages the countryside and nature reserves in and around the city, including Eastney Beach.
It's one of the few sites we have in Portsmouth which is purely natural. A lot of our other sites, obviously, they've had urban influences, planting and things over the years. And we manage them now for wildlife and public access, the same as here.
Eastney Beach is home to over 100 plant species that exist on the vegetative shingle, such as sea beet, a precursor to beetroot.
It's an internationally important environment. It's part of the BAP, or Biological Action Plan. And what we've actually got here is shingle which is moving. As you go further down to the beach, you'll notice there's no plants at all. That's because it's inundated by the tide on a regular basis. The shingle is moved and obviously plants can't get a hold. As you come up the beach, there's a ridge, or called a storm ridge, and at the back of that, the shingle is less mobile, and over time it becomes vegetated. You've got different species that vegetate at different rates. You've got the colonisers, things like the sea kale, sea radish, things like that, and as they become established, they act as like a windbreak for smaller particles, and those smaller particles become embedded within the shingle itself, which allows other species to actually adapt and grow into it.
The habitat on the beach affects the rate of erosion.
What's actually happened over time is the beach actually is built up. The flint that you actually see has actually come from all the chalk cliffs and around and about. As it builds up, it becomes more stable. The plants become established. Once they become established, they tend to hold the shingle together a bit more. So there is a certain amount of sea protection. Obviously, there's the rubbish aspect. It's better to take the rubbish home. But in some ways, some of the rubbish, i.e. the dead seaweed and stuff which actually gets washed up onto the beach, that is incorporated into the shingle, and that's where the organic matter comes from, which allows succession of the plants to actually grow.
The countryside officers ensure that invasive species and scrub invasions such as brambles are not allowed to take hold, but otherwise flora that takes root is allowed to stay.
The main one people can see is actually the sea kale, which is the blue cabbage-like species. It's actually part of the Brassica family. So in the old days, people actually ate it. They would soil it up or put the shingle around it, blanch it the same way as you would sort of things like asparagus and celery, and actually pick it and eat it. In fact, at one point it became quite scarce because so much was picked for eating.
Would people be allowed to do that now, or are they not allowed?
It's best not to. There are a number of people that do actually pick the odd leaf. The odd leaf's not too much of a problem, but when you start digging things up, it's actually against the law. This is one of the sea kale. As you can see, it's part of the cabbage family, roughly, but if you actually look at the leaves, you notice how thick and rubbery they are. That's a way of retaining water. If you notice inside, you'll notice how there's bits and pieces starting to collect there. Bits of twig, bits of seaweed, and that's where the organic matter comes from. And over time that'll actually build up. Once the organic matter reaches a certain level, you'll get other species managing to colonise. It's also where you get all the spiders and insects that actually live in amongst it. The red ones you can see, or the red valerian, they're not a vegetative shingle species per se. They will live in other dry, arid conditions, but where the conditions are right, like here, where there's a bit more soil, because of the coloniser species, they can take hold. There's actually an apple tree growing on the beach. It's what you call a wilding. It's grown from a seed which somebody's obviously thrown away as part of an apple core. But as you can see from the structure of it, it's not an apple tree as you would expect, like tall with a single stem. It's very low growing. It's all to do the wind levels and the transpiration and water, but it stunts its growth. So you actually see it's only about 6 inches high.
This is Shan Robins for That's TV.